Now, as nationwide protests continue in Cambodia for garment workers' rights, yesterday saw the close of London Fashion Week. Reporter Yasmin Khatun went along to find out if London fashion has become any more ethical.
Fashion Week in London means style, eccentricity and Somerset House. But as a protest declared earlier this week, have we all but forgotten the garment workers behind our clothing?
Ethics in the garments industry came to the forefront of our minds earlier this year as an international campaign for better workers' rights and a more ethical industry went full throttle. On the 24th of April, Fashion Revolution Day hit the ground and campaigners asked for a change to laws protecting garment workers. With London Fashion Week in full speed, I asked Ursula de Castro, the lady behind Aesthetica, which showcases designers committing to working sustainably during the week, asking whether anything has changed.
Really the changes that I see here are, I would say, in terms of design and communication, so that we are beginning to see much higher level of design and above all much younger designers just coming out of college, so super creative, super passionate, wanting to be involved in the movement and not just in the concept. I think that there is a real appetite from the consumer as well as the designers to really look at our industry in a different way, honour the workers that are making our clothes, understand where our clothes come from. So it's not just initiatives such as Fashion Revolution Day that bring that to the forefront, but also, right the mainstream of the fashion industry is really beginning to understand the power and the importance of looking at fashion in a different way.
Visitors to London Fashion Week also shared their thoughts.
Do you think there's more some of these designers can do maybe to make us more aware of where our clothes are coming from?
Well, particularly with high-end designers, they have the money that they can spend. People are paying a lot more for the garments. It's not mass-produced. You can definitely source clothes more locally with workers getting fair rights.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Maura said. Especially when they have the money to invest in it, a lot more awareness can be put into it.
People are aware of it, but I'm not sure if they're acting on it, and if there's enough incentive for the big companies to change when people are still buying clothes regardless of the production standards.
As a week of fashion comes to a close and moves on to the next city, our choices will have evolved, but will they be for the right reasons? Yasmin Khatun, The Report, Islam Channel.
In the studio to discuss all this, we're joined by Owen Espley, who's a senior economic justice campaigner for War on Want, and by Clare Nally, who's a fair trade coordinator for People Tree. Welcome to the programme, both of you. So, Clare, there were claims in that report that the mainstream of the fashion industry are beginning to change. Mm-hmm. Is that true or hot air?
I think it is definitely true. I think since Rana Plaza, you've seen a lot more brands talking about what they're doing.
That's the garment factory that burnt down.
Yeah, sorry, the building collapse. Yeah. But I also think that since there's been, the ILO have been involved in getting compensation for all the victims, and it was estimated $40 million was needed to compensate everyone, and still I think there's only 17.9 million. So while brands are talking about it more and are engaging more, I think there's still a lot that can be done, especially in Bangladesh.
So, Owen, maybe at least out of that tragedy, it hit them so hard in the pocketbook that they woke up. Is that?
I think what was really remarkable, following everyone's horror, really, at the over 1,100 garment workers who died at Rana Plaza in Bangladesh, was the outrage which people all around the world showed. And I think the hundreds of thousands of people who took action have forced these brands in the UK to take small steps in the right direction.
So what does it mean when you say they're taking small steps? What are they actually doing? I mean, we've seen that there's these protests going on in Cambodia. At that end of things, what's actually changing?
So in Bangladesh, the unions in Bangladesh, together with international unions, have agreed with some of the international brands the Bangladesh Safety Accord. And what this is doing is getting the financial resources and the ability of brands, global brands, to ensure that the inspections are taking place in those factories in Bangladesh. Over 1,000 different factories have now been inspected, which means that's hundreds of thousands of workers now going to work in factories which have been known to be safe. Lots of them need improvements. Some of those factories, about 20, have been closed down immediately because there was an imminent threat to death there. that means that, potentially workers have been saved that grisly death that we saw at Rana Plaza. It's not true across the picture. Because of those hundreds of thousands of people who've been campaigning around this issue, some brands, like Gap in particular, have been trying to avoid making the kinds of commitments that are really needed to ensure that workers go to work in safe factories.
What does that mean when companies like Gap start trying to avoid this kind of pressure? What do they actually do to get around it? Or do they just say, hey, we're carrying on as normal?
I think maybe you'd be better at answering that question than I would.
Well,
maybe from the different perspectives.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way then.
Yeah.
What does a company like yours do to comply with it and that they aren't doing? Let's take it from that way around.
Well, so People Tree are a fair trade fashion company, so that means that we're certified by the World Fair Trade Organisation. And essentially what that means is it's very much a producer-centric, it's a very holistic approach to fashion. So starting with the cotton, because it's kind of like socially and environmentally sustainable. So we use 70% of our collection as organic cotton, which is sourced from India, and you can see through our website and things like that, you can engage with actually the farmers who make the cotton, and then that's brought onto the producers and the hand weavers, and we follow then step by step throughout the supply chain. We're following everyone who's making the garments from the cotton field to the end product, and instilling then these World Fair Trade Organisation 10 principles of fair trade. So that's paying a fair price, so that weavers are earning above the minimum wage, up to 50% above the minimum wage, and in turn their kids can go to school instead of maybe in the conventional industry where there's actually many children working because their parents aren't earning enough money. So it's just a more holistic approach. It's very much producer-centric, helping marginally or economically disadvantaged people to kind of be able to participate in this whole trade system.
So if that's what a company that's trying to do the right thing does, what does Gap, that's trying not to do the right thing, do to avoid that, or how do they deal with the pressure that's on them?
So I think one kind of element that was brought up there is really important, and it's about the worker voice. Workers themselves, when they're going to work and they're involved in the process of assessing whether the factory is safe, are naturally going to ensure that the factory is safe because their life depends on it. Companies like Gap and Asda Walmart in Bangladesh, they've set up an alternative called the Alliance rather than the Accord for worker safety. And critically, that alliance doesn't actually involve the trade unions, doesn't actually involve workers' own representatives in discussing the safety of factories. So what they're trying to do is pull the wool over consumers' eyes by saying, the difference between the Accord and Alliance is quite slight, and so consumers would naturally get confused. And so they're trying to do something which won't be legally binding in the same way the Accord is, to renege on their commitments.
That's a critical question, isn't it? Because it's one thing for others to be concerned, and rightly. It's another thing for the people themselves to be organised to be able to make their own demands. And is that part of what you do? Is there a recognition of unions, for instance?
Yeah, completely. So People Tree has been running for about 20 years, and since the beginning, Safia, who's the CEO, has been supporting one of the major trade unions in Bangladesh, the National Garment Workers Federation. And so continuously our work, it is a fashion brand, but it's also really engaged in campaigning and outreach. So after Rana Plaza, for example, we started an initiative called the Rage campaign, which was collecting signatures so that the victims could have compensation, and also just supporting. We had Amin from the trade union over to the UK on the year anniversary to give them a platform for their voice as well, so to kind of tie it all in together.
Okay, well, Claire, Owen, thanks very much for that, but I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. On tonight's programme, I'd like to thank all my guests and, of course, you at home for tuning in. Remember, you can join in our Twitter conversation, and you can look at all of tonight's stories by going to @Islam channel and using the hashtag report. Well, we're going to leave you with some scenes from Japan, where about 10,000 spectators flocked to Kamakura in the south of Tokyo to watch an ancient horseback archery ritual called a Yasubume. This is a 12th century ritual started by the first shogun of the Kamakura period, after he grew concerned that samurai lacked the proper archery skills. Well, we'll be back right on target tomorrow night, but from us now, good night.